map of erased, silence, and single visual map of Iran, surrounding conflict zone, faintly lit. Right now, tens of millions of Iranians are watching a war that their government is curating for them. And the distance between that curated version and what is actually happening on the ground is the most important intelligence story almost nobody is framing correctly. When a state controls what its citizens see during a war, it is not managing a news cycle. It is constructing the reality within which every subsequent decision, political, personal, historical, will be made. The question that Ray McGovern's documented analytical framework forces us to ask is not what Iranian state media is saying. It is what the architecture required to say it reveals about what the Iranian government actually knows and what it is afraid its own people would do if they knew it too. Music enters quietly, single instrument measured by publicly available U.S. intelligence community threat assessment, Iran section. The documented record here is specific. The BBC's Global Disinformation Unit spent the first week of this conflict's coverage tracking Iranian state media in granular detail. And what analyst Reha Kansara found was not simple fabrication. It was something considerably more sophisticated. Iranian state media did not invent everything. It reported selectively true facts, official statements, confirmed positions, real diplomatic developments. That layer exists for a reason. It establishes baseline credibility. Because if everything a state outlet broadcasts is false, even an isolated viewer eventually senses it. What sits beneath that credible surface layer is systematic omission, casualty figures that diverge from independent monitors, geographic developments that contradict the official account of how the conflict is progressing. None of it reported, not because the journalists don't know, because the architecture of the system ensures that what contradicts the required narrative does not reach broadcast. Mass murder reference Soviet state television coverage of Afghanistan, 1980s, McGovern's framework. The Soviet Union managed its domestic information environment about the Afghan war for nearly a decade, presenting a defensive, successful operation to a population whose sons were coming home in sealed coffins. The pattern is documented. The outcome is documented. The gap between official narrative and lived reality did not close gradually. It collapsed. Intensity belts measured gradual. Iranian state broadcasts imagery alongside independent reporting. The analytical core of what McGovern's documented methodology identifies here is three-layered. The pattern is institutional, not accidental. State media systems under political pressure do not distort randomly. They distort in consistent, traceable directions, always toward the narrative that serves the political survival of those who control the broadcast infrastructure. That is not analysis. That is a documented historical record across every comparable case. McGovern has studied and written about. The gap is measurable. Millions of Iranians have satellite dishes. They follow BBC, Persian, VOA, Iran, International. The documented efforts to jam those signals during this conflict period are not technical malfunctions. They are policy decisions. And a policy decision to jam an independent signal is a precise, documentable measure of how large the gap has become between what the state is telling its citizens and what those citizens would see if the jamming stopped. And the power question, who benefits from sustaining this architecture, answers itself when you look at what AI has now introduced into the equation. Iranian state actors are deploying AI generated imagery to manufacture visual evidence for claims with no documentary basis. And this is the part mainstream coverage is consistently underweighting. Critics of the state are doing the same. When fabricated content floods from multiple directions simultaneously, the party with the greatest institutional reach holds the structural advantage. The state doesn't need everyone to believe it. It needs enough people to be uncertain that they don't act. Music feds to near silence. Map of Iran, a single lit point. The answer to the question this episode opened with is this. Iranian state media is not primarily trying to produce belief. It is trying to produce uncertainty to make the alternative seem as suspect as the official account until the population cannot be confident enough in any version of reality to organize around it. What McGovern's documented work returns to across every crisis he has analyzed is this: the corruption of the information environment is never random. It is purposeful. It serves specific interests, and identifying whose interests are served is always the beginning of genuine analysis. The question this leaves you with is not comfortable. It is. If a government must black out its own internet to sustain a narrative, what does that tell you about how much confidence that government actually has in the war it is asking its people to support? If this analysis gives you something the mainstream isn't, subscribe and share it with someone who deserves to think clearly about what is actually happening. The most dangerous information environment is not the one where everything is false. It is the one where enough is true to make the lies impossible to find.